Happy Halloween. So I was going to try to be in character and pretend that I was Dr. Singularity and act, but I can't act. I can't act. So I'm just going to be me dressed up as like a Hindu god slash Marvel character or whatever, Marvel, whatever. So in a way, the blue symbolizes something divine in Hinduism, and and the messages that I have recognized and interpreted are divine in nature. Now, those of you who are looking for a concluding final truth, if you have beliefs that reality is such a way, and the ultimate final concluding truth shows that it's not the way you think it is, reality, then you will miss out. You will never find the final concluding truth while you're holding on to your beliefs, right? if what you believed reality to be is actual reality, then why are you suffering? Why do you have problems? Why don't you know everything? Why is there any doubt? Why basically why are you discontent? If what you believe is true, then why is there discontentment and uncertainty in your life? These are valid questions, right? So when I'm looking for something, which I do quite often, the way it works is that I have a mental image in my head. And I superimpose that mind's eye image over top of things that appear in my vision. But if I assume that image, if my assumption of that image is wrong, like say that it's in a container and I'm looking for the thing, but it's actually in a container. So basically, what it's been my experience that I have looked at exactly what I'm looking for, but because in my head, the vision in my mind's eye is a little bit different and it didn't go ding 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 when I superimposed my mind's eye vision idea of what I'm looking for onto the thing that I'm looking for. I didn't see it. And I looked right at it. So this is what's happening. I keep, because I can see so clearly these messages as messages and the proper interpretations of them so clearly, and it's so simple that I am trying, I no longer work on my theory. I work on trying to understand how people can't see it, how they don't understand it, how it's not catching on. And I've come to the conclusion that everyone's deluded. they we have been programmed through school and academia to believe that reality is a certain way, and it's the way our teachers tell us it is, right? We've just been taught, and groomed and programmed since age 5 to just believe everything that the teachers were telling us in academia. But look at the state of humanity. If you're actually looking for truth, you have to be sincere and honest about your situation and about the situation of humanity. And to be honest and objective about the situation is we're fucked. Like, the reason why you don't understand how of an existential threat, it's not even a threat anymore. It's done. It's a done deal. That you don't understand the full ramifications of what's happening with the climate. That you're in denial of it. That is a manifestation of what's going on here. We don't want to talk about the negative things. We are in constant denial of things, of the reality that doesn't fit our worldview or what we want it to. So regardless, reality is that which happens regardless of what you want to happen. That's what reality is. It just keeps going on, and you're the one that needs to adapt to what's going on in this sensual realm, in the realm of experience. But what physics and physicists and academia have done, especially physicists, is that we are mesmerized and enchanted by symbol and language. So language is symbol. It's exactly what the thing is not. The description of something is not the thing, right? The description, the representation of something through language is lesser than the thing that is being described, right? But what's happened is that we have taken the symbol to be the reality, right? So we've taken the symbol of a representation of something to be more real and substantial than the thing it's representing. That's the whole thing in a nutshell. So I was going to call myself Dr. Singularity, okay? So how does there's just one, okay? There's obviously, if you just intuitively see, that's another thing that science has done, is it completely removed all intuition and all naturalness, right? You have to wait until you get the results of a measurement from a machine, and then you apply some fucking math to it, and then you make a prediction about what might possibly happen. Well, that system will never be able to predict something that never has happened before, will it? Right? If all you're basing all of your predictions on just everything that's happened before what's you're predicting, then there's no way to predict something that has never happened before if you're just looking at all the things that have happened before. So we need intuition. We need to get back our natural, innate understanding and operating in the world like nature does, you know? All right, so I'm going to bounce around because that's what I do. So there's only one thing, right? So the problem is the mind body problem is duality. The problem is that the duality that appears is not correct. That is what's going on. We're trying to fix our incorrect view, right? What if there's no problem, if we've figured everything out, like we keep, like the scientists tell us that we've figured everything out, or we're really freaking close, how is it that there's 220 theories that are all incorrect? How is it that science hasn't found the theory of everything? How is it that humanity is so fucked up? If we understand reality to the degree that we do, through academia is telling us this, right? Academics are in control of everything, right? Basically, all the academics, all the PhD level people are basically in control of society. And look at the state of society. We have to be honest here and recognize how fucked up we are, and that we are going more and more insane, right? And we're killing all life on the planet. Now, the truth is very difficult to accept, right? So that's why literally half a dozen people have accepted the truth of non-conceptuality. They've because it's tough. It's tough to admit when you're wrong and swallow your pride and transcend the ego and get to the reality. But the ego just wants to reaffirm its own belief systems. The ego, all right, so when I understand everything, right? So I actually really do. And it's very difficult because I see everything all at once. So it's really hard for me to stay on a linear track of explaining things because I just when there's everything to be explained, it's difficult to stay on track and not just jump over and yeah. All right. So how does one thing appear as two things? Well, the most effective analogy for this is when you're looking into a mirror. When you look into a mirror, you can say, that's me, while simultaneously possessing the inherent intuition, I am not that, right? So when you look in a mirror, you know that's me. You know that's you in the mirror, but you're not that, right? So this is a little bit of a weird situation, isn't it? You can say that that's me, right? That is a representation, a symbol of my biological body. But what has happened is that we have taken the reflection to actually be the self. You see, this is where we become mesmerized and enchanted by the symbol. The reflection in the mirror is a symbol of the higher dimensional body that it is dependent upon. But so in this analogy, you need to take one step back, and so the image in the mirror in this analogy is the entire physical realm and your body. Okay? So we have so if that is a symbol, if this entire physical, I'm not even going to call it physical anymore, because physical is what physics defines the reality as. It's physics. Physics and and physicians, not physicians. How is it that they are trying to convince us that nothing can exist beyond the measuring parameters of scientific devices, right? So science requires measurement. Science basically is measurement, isn't it? And measurement requires two. So how does singularity appear as duality? Well, you measure it. You apply a bias to the singularity. And when you describe it, that is symbol representing this, right? So language represents the physical realm, right? The realm of experience. But if the realm of experience itself is a symbol, then you end up with a situation of turtles all the way, right? So you have a symbol of a symbol of a symbol, right? So you just keep going down. This is the root of devolution, devolving, not evolving into a higher level of self-awareness, but devolving into a lower level of self-awareness, a lower experience, a lesser experience. So when you take the self to be the body, so this is what happened. Speaking as a god, this is what happened with human consciousness. Okay, this is the dawn of humanity. Is that human consciousness at the point of thought entering our consciousness. So there's a collective consciousness. Every species has a collective consciousness. And at the point where humanity entered this reality is the point where thought, the voice from nowhere, right, the voice in the head, entered consciousness. So that which distinguishes humanity from all the other physical objects in the universe or biological, let's take it up a notch. Let's just say we're biological. What separates us from everything else is the voice in the hand, right? We're pretty sure that rocks aren't communicating beyond gravity, right? It recognizes gravity, but it's not communicating with anything else, is it? So language is a symbol of a symbol, right? So physics and physicists are continually trying to prove that the illusion is real, because physicists is consciousness that is rooted in the belief that they are the body. But what happened when human consciousness erupted into reality is that this is so hard to understand, but when thought and symbol and language entered consciousness, that is when that consciousness that was prior to humans evolved into a higher level of self-awareness. Now, this higher level of self-awareness, I believe, is planetary. So there's 10 dimensions, but they're not dimensions that can be measured with a freaking ruler, right? That's what they want. They want to say that the 10 dimensions can be basically geometry. It can be represented by geometry. It can be measured by a ruler. But no, what if they are okay, so the 10 dimensions are quarks, subatomic particles, atoms, molecules, cells, species, planetary, solar, galactic, universal. So if we included the other three, this would be 10, right? So the natural evolution, and I believe that half of the collective consciousness that was prior to humanity jumped into the higher higher level of self-awareness that is planetary consciousness. Now, I know all the materialists will just be saying, well, they haven't even gotten this far because they already believe that anything that isn't science-based is just gobbledygook. But to me, this makes sense. Is that, in a way, idealists are correct in saying that everything has consciousness. So, what happened with humanity is that half of that species that jumped to the higher level of consciousness, of self-awareness, we're the part that didn't. Okay, so humanity is the consciousness that didn't jump to evolve to planetary consciousness. So at that point, when you look when we go back to the analogy of that's me, I am not that, that is the equivalent. What happened is the equivalent of taking self to be the reflection and then realizing that you're not the reflection. So when we entered this reality, which is a divine game, we assumed self to be the reflection. And with human consciousness, what happened with the advent of human consciousness is that we realized that we're not the body. That's what happened. We realized that the realm of sensual experience is not fundamental. So we realized what we are not, and then the half that realized what they are, they evolved, and we were left making the shit up. So we know what we are not, but we don't know what we are, and that's why we're so confused. So this is why those 220 theories that are all incomplete are so similar, but are incomplete. All right, so if there's one thing, if there's just one, if there's just singularity, then how does it appear as two? So the fundamental process of how this game works, of how this program works, it's very, very, very basic, right? And it's just awareness coming back onto itself. Because there's only awareness. I think the best word to use for the singularity or the reality is just awareness. And consciousness, and the fundamental process is, because there's only one thing, it's awareness coming back onto itself. Now, coming back onto itself there's a lot of play that can go with that, right? It's quite vague in a way. But let's look at this. So let's say that that's one. That's a singularity, right? A point. Can I even draw a point? Okay. A point. One. There's nothing else but the point. There isn't even the board that the point is drawn on. Okay? The point is the point. The point is just everything. Everything and nothing, all that can possibly be is at this point. So what does it mean when awareness comes back onto itself? Well, the point, let's say, comes back onto itself. Right? The circle signifies some sort of change, right? It doesn't matter if it's moving through time or if it's moving through space. Any type of movement would probably necessitate duality. So there's space and time involved in every single one of these motions. But the simplest way to express a point coming back onto itself is a circle, right? And this is what we call orbit. It's in orbit. And then let's say that now we define that new state as a circle. Okay? So when the circle, the simplest way for it, the most effective and efficient way for a circle to come back onto itself, I don't know if I can draw this so you understand what the hell I'm trying to say. But it spins, right? A circle, if it the most efficient way for it to come back onto itself is for it to spin on an axis, right? So that creates that orbit spin. So this is what, do you see now how everything is metaphor? All of it, so all of this is a mystery, and all of this is providing clues to solve the mystery. That's all it is. Do you understand? That even the realm of the senses is metaphor. It's a symbol, right? So that what we call a sphere and what science calls spin is awareness coming back onto itself. It's just taken a new definition, right? It's just, so the point comes back onto itself and creates a circle. And we call that orbit. And then if you don't recognize, if the singularity doesn't recognize self by the time it comes back onto itself, then it goes along for another iteration. So this is a new iteration. It's taking self to be the circle. And a circle is an expression of singularity, right? If you look at a one, that's how we draw a one, right? Is that there's a pole, right? There's poles to a one. How is that representing singularity? This is supposed to be a negative and that's supposed to be a positive. But there's poles to a one, right? So a one is a linear expression of a cyclical process. So one, we automatically think that one relates to quantity, but quantity is wrong. As I've shown in my other videos, 4 other videos that show how mathematics, the entirety of mathematics is incorrect. It's an incorrect interpretation of the message that this blue god guy is trying to fucking relate to you humans. right. So now we're at a sphere. All right. So this the one, which is a point, which is zero dimensional, right? But the way that science and physics comes up with the point, get a load of this. They start with the duality and they derive the point from the duality, right? So space, time, they create a grid, right? A Cartesian grid, space, time, and derived from this interaction of the space and the time comes a point. So they're trying to derive singularity from duality. It's completely obvious, but it has to be the other way around, right? The duality has to emerge from the singularity somehow. All right, so point, come back onto itself. Circle, come back onto itself. Sphere, right? Spinning around an axis. Now, what about the sphere? So the sphere, all right, so the sphere goes around and comes back onto itself. So, so this is hollow. We're assuming that's hollow, and that creates a torus, which is basically a freaking donut, right? You see this now, right? Is that if that thing goes around and you measure it from the fourth dimension or whatever, like the whole process of it, it creates a donut, a torus. And then what about so when the torus spins around itself, what the fuck does that create? A black hole? Or do you just go back to here? Right? I am doing this for people who are ready for this. And it's not very many. This requires a lot of intuition and a lot of not accepting what you've been taught. It's been crammed down our throats, hasn't it? You need to go to school. Okay, so this is another expression of. So this is John Wheeler, who is one of the founders of quantum mechanics. John Wheeler's participatory universe diagram. All right? So he was trying to understand and express how it is that the observer is somehow involved in the process of reality. Because with quantum mechanics, and quantum mechanics was the end of science. So the end of physics. Because it's all metaphor. It all comes down to there's messages, there's clues in this mystery. There's clues all over in this mystery of life. But humanity has misinterpreted these clues, and that's why we're so fucked up. And again, if you don't want to believe that you're so fucked up and that all of humanity is killing the technology that math has created and the technology that humanity is addicted to is killing all life on the planet, if you don't want to believe that, then you won't see it, right? So if you don't engage in trying to think about and work out, right, actually work on this, what I'm trying to show you, if you just don't engage in it, well, then you won't see the truth in it. It's that simple. When you're 5 years old and you go to school, you just take everyone's word for it, right? Like, we just assume that our parents and the teachers know what the fuck they're talking about. But if you knew the teacher's life and your parents' life, you would recognize that they're as fucked up as you are. This is a case, humanity is a case of the blind leading the blind. And we just keep getting blinder and blinder and blinder. So this this blue guy is that isn't human, that has extra human knowledge, is trying to tell humanity that science is wrong. Everything that humanity has done since the advent of the voice from nowhere is unnatural and devolving. How can one think that that an experience that can be displayed on a screen, the digital experience, is a fuller, more enriching, more satisfying experience than the sensual realm? It, when a person plays a video game for 13 hours straight, how do you think they feel after that? It's empty, right? Everything that is experienced is fundamentally unsubstantial. And we don't recognize this. And this is the source of all addiction, right? What humanity is doing is trying to affirm that the illusion is reality. And it isn't. How much more obvious does it have to be? Quantum physics has shown that there's nothing there. They've looked at the realm of physics so closely that they've come, it's revealed that there's no thing at the base of all the things. But physicists, since it's been about 100 years since we came across quantum mechanics, and yet physics continues to go on. And you know how bizarre this is quantum physics is based upon the square root of -1. So in mathematics, there are some anomalies that mathematicians don't want to talk about. And one of them is, how is it that 2 times 2 equals 2 plus 2? That's an anomaly. And another one is, how is it that there is no symbol for the square root of -1? There's no answer for that. So this is what mathematicians have done. They've imagined a system, a combination of symbols, I suppose, that produces the square root of -1. It's all in their imagination, okay? And from that pure imagination of them trying to fix an anomaly within mathematics, that attempt to fix that anomaly within a mathematician's head has come up with quantum mechanics. I can't believe it. Like when I first heard Federico Fajin talk about this, it's my understanding is that all of quantum mechanics is imagined. It's all imagination. It's based on a fictional, made up symbol, I guess, that or equation where the square root of -1 is the product. So it's all imagination. Do you see? So quantum mechanics is basically saying that all of this is imagination. It's all imagined. It's all a dream. Quantum mechanics is saying that all of quantum mechanics is based on imagination, right? They've just imagined some sort of system that where the product is the square root of -1. So it's and not only that, but we can find only half and exactly half of the information required to completely describe the realm of experience. And yet they still go on, right? Like that is undeniable. That is hardwired within this experience, is that you can only know half and exactly half of what is required to know everything. Well, doesn't that sound like a system that maybe God would create in order for it to have an entertaining experience? So, really, what this all comes down to is your experience. But you have to be honest about your experience. So, what is the status quo of experience? What is the base reality of experience? Well, I would say it's just being, right? So, what is the fundamental level of existence is basically sitting in a freaking chair, isn't it? So, discontentment and contentment are the guides on which we should base our life upon. So, if you're content, then there doesn't require any motion or any movement or any activity at all, right? When you're content, that is the conclusion of all the activity, right? Let's say it's something simple like the kids are asleep and all of the laundry is folded and put away. Okay? That is a state of contentment for that day. You sit in a chair and everything's done. So you don't need to do anything anymore. So you just plop down and you're content. But what do? Instead, we sit down in front of the fucking screen, right? So everything in this realm is unsubstantial and unsatisfying. This is something that no one wants to say except this blue guy that's just relating truth, right? So why is there so much addiction and suffering in this world? It's because none of it is substantial. It is the playing of a video game. It's taking the reflection in the mirror to be the reality when it isn't. So, how do we recognize what's real? You have to get through, you have to transcend the voice from nowhere. The voice in the head is basically Satan. Now, you may say that that's harsh, but let's just call it, let's go on a softer version of it and call it ignorance. So when you're playing a video game, you're ignoring the real world, the higher dimensional world in which the video game is dependent upon, right? So what's real is what is illusion is that which is dependent upon that what's real. So that which is real does not depend upon the relative thing, right? So when you're when you're playing a video game, the video game can crash and stop, and you will still exist, right? Whereas if you stopped existing, the person that's playing the video game, well, the video game automatically, naturally just ceases because there's no player of the game. So this whole thing is a video game. It's unsubstantial. The purpose of all of this is to find conclusion of it. That's how that's why. That's the why. The why of all of this is for God's entertainment, for your entertainment. And the game, right? So games are entertaining. That's why humanity plays games and acts. And that's why we venerate all of the people that entertain us. Sports stars, musicians, actors. It's all pretend, right? That's why there's acting, is because this is a divine act. So I'm sure I could babble on for a couple more hours, but let's get to the point. The point is to find the reality is to not focus on the symbol. We are entranced by the symbol, which is the representation of the reality. So we've taken ourselves to literally be the reflection in the mirror, and we're not. So what projects the reflection in the mirror, what projects duality and separateness is the symbol, is word. So right now, there is the potential, the option to experience this realm of the senses, of the five senses, without bias, without a word or a symbol attached to the experience. This is an option that science has removed from our awareness, right? So there's no, even religion. I was a Buddhist for 10 years. I was a Christian for 30 years. And no one ever talked about the option of just being thought free. Just not having any words attached to the sensual experience. And that is your salvation. That is the reality. The reality is unbiased observation. A word is a bias. So, in order for you to be content and solve the mystery, then you have to transcend the voice in the head. It's this simple. And the problem is that academia is the cult that worships the voice in the head, right? Academia is all about just generating more thought. And that's why we're mesmerized by the symbol and not the reality. And it gets so insane that they believe that that which is representative of the reality actually is controlling the reality. And that's where this multiverse ridiculousness comes from. The multiverse is the wooiest woo of all the woos, isn't it? It's like the entire actual physical universe splits into two every time there's an apparent decision to be made in your head. Well, of course that's ridiculous, isn't it? So every possible thing that you can think of that could happen at every possible moment with every single person in the whole universe, that's what's happening. They're just basically saying that we don't understand anything, and anything that could happen that anything that you can possibly think of that could happen is actually happening. Really. Like, and there is no thing that could possibly exist beyond the measuring parameters of scientific devices. That's what they're trying to convince us, right? Is that reality, science is measurement, and measurement comes through these devices that the voice in the head has instructed the scientists to construct. So what we need to do, if you are serious about this truth and reality thing, and no longer suffering and just wanting to be content, then you have to transcend thought. That this is the final message, is that the voice in the head is lying. It is the deceiver. And I know this is very, very difficult to accept, because that is exactly what makes humans human. What makes us distinct from all the other things in the universe. But then we go back to being honest and recognizing that humanity and the technology that math has produced and science has produced is killing all life on the planet. And it has humanity completely addicted to the technology, right? Completely dependent upon it, completely addicted to it. And not only that, but it ends up killing all biological life on the planet. So how could you possibly be more wrong than killing all life on a planet? That's what we're doing, whether you want to hear it or not. So on my YouTube channel, there are many videos that go into greater detail than what I have here. And this may be my final video, because I'm just repeating myself over and over and over and over. And it doesn't matter how many times you tell someone that they're in a cult and they're in a state of delusion. If they don't want to break out of that state of delusion and out of that cult, then none of it will do any good. So if you are ready for this, then here it is. You need to start meditating and transcending the voice in the head, silencing it. That is humanity's problem, the whole thing. beyond the boredom and beyond the restlessness and beyond the confusion is just contentment. I have practiced this for over a decade, and I can verify it to be true. I can sit in a chair without engaging in any experience in this realm, being completely thought-free, and just, it's perfect contentment. But you have to, the catch-22 is you have to get through the boredom. This is where the spiritual warrior emerges. This is not easy, but this is the only purpose to life. This is, this knowledge, this understanding, reveals all that's been false and taken to be true. It destroys everything. Like, literally, this, what I know and what I'm expressing through all these videos and is the end of science. It reveals everything that's taken to be true that is actually false. And that's why all 220 theories that are out there, besides mine, are wrong. That's why they're wrong. We have to include spirit back in the equation. We have to recognize where we went wrong and start afresh. And if you're ready to do that, then omniscience awaits you. You will understand everything if you investigate my work and engage in the process of transcending thought and finding that peace and contentment that is your natural state. Because you're God. There is a creator to this. This is a creation. And if you don't believe all that, then you will continue on in ignorance and suffering